After Ilia Topuria knocked out Max Holloway, it seems like he's going to go on this run where he's not going to take a loss for a while because he's just so good at mixed martial arts. He's able to mix the martial arts very well, and he's able to impose his style on his opponents effectively, and he hasn't taken a loss yet. But eventually, if you stick around long enough, as people say in MMA, you will eventually take a loss. And in this video, I want to talk about a few fighters that could be future opponents of Ilia within maybe 2 or 3 years. And I want to talk about how they would do against Ilia, from the lowest chance to the highest chance. We're going to talk about it. And these fighters include Aljamain Sterling, Alexander Volkanovski, Islam Makhachev, Diego Lopez, and Movsar. And starting with the fighter who I think has the lowest chance of beating Ilia Topuria, and that's going to be Alexander Volkanovski. And I know this sounds crazy because there's guys like Aljamain Sterling and Movsar on this list, but given the fact that in the first fight, Ilia showed the ability to get to Volk relatively easily and pretty fast in the fight. Even if he was compromised from the Islam fight, I don't think he would have ever taken that punch. And that Max Holloway fight just showed that Ilia's power is on a different level. And also, Ilia is continuously getting better. And I don't see Volkanovski finishing Topuria. I think that the way he would have to beat him is to outpoint him. But I feel like that's very dangerous, and Volkanovski has some bad habits in his fight style that leave him open and vulnerable to punches from Ilia Topuria. And I don't see him being able to really make significant changes to his style in order to, be able to beat Ilia Topuria. I think Ilia Topuria will knock him out in the first round in the next fight. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And also, Volkanovski's coach did say that they believed it was like a lucky punch that Ilia got, which is crazy. And also, we know that Volkanovski might be influenced by that because in his first fight versus Islam, his team, his coaches, everybody was telling him he won the fight. He believed it so much that he thought he could beat Islam on short notice, which is crazy. And if he thinks that Ilia knocked him out for lucky punch, then yeah, he's definitely going to get knocked out on the first round in the next fight. But then moving on to a fighter with a slightly higher chance of beating Ilia, and that's going to be Aljamain Sterling. And I think that Aljamain Sterling has more chances of beating Ilia than Volk because he does have a dangerous ground game. He does have a great ability to take the back of his opponents, and he was in a lower weight class where your skill needed to be higher than your attributes, and he was able to show tremendous skill in that weight class, with his grappling, and his striking is very unorthodox, and it might cause Ilia problems a bit early, but I think that he might be able to get out the first round, and he would constantly be shooting for takedowns. But I think that the way this fight would end is similar to how Ilia Topuria finished Ryan Hall, and kind of follow Aljamain Sterling to the ground, being fed up with Aljamain just constantly going out for these takedowns and then getting some ground and pounding and getting the finish over Aljamain Sterling. And then someone who has a higher chance of beating Ilia is going to be Movsar. And I think that Movsar has a higher chance of beating Ilia than Volk and Aljamain Sterling because he does have a strong wrestling background. He has some very strong takedowns. His finishing potential isn't as great as a guy like Aljamain Sterling on the ground, but it would be a 5-round fight where Movsar does know how to win. He does know how to win rounds. He's been doing it his whole UFC career. Hasn't gone to finish yet. We'll see if we can finish Aljamain Sterling, but I put him above Volk and Aljamain Sterling because I feel like his defense is a lot better. These guys are a lot more open on the feet, and I feel like they get KO'd and hurt a lot faster than a guy like Movsar. I think that Movsar can still be swarmed by Ilia because he does tend to back up in straight lines, but his offensive grappling could pose some interesting threats to Ilia, especially considering that a guy like Bryce Mitchell was able to secure maybe like 1 or 2 takedowns on Ilia Topuria. But moving on to the featherweight with the highest chance of beating Ilia Topuria, and that's going to be Diego Lopez. I think that Diego Lopez has very solid boxing, better than Aljamain Sterling and Movsar. He has a lot more power in his hands, which can actually hurt Ilia Topuria. And also his grappling is incredible. He has finishing potential on the ground as well. So it's going to be dangerous for Ilia no matter where the fight goes. And yeah, Diego Lopez has a serious chance of finishing Ilia. I think that's going to be a tough matchup. And also he does have solid defense, and he's not going to just back up the whole time. He's actually going to stand there, stand his ground, and maybe push Ilia Topuria back. And Max Holloway was having success when he was standing his ground against Ilia Topuria. But Ilia does possess that ability to close the distance, and he did knock out Max Holloway. So even if Diego Lopez has a solid chin, I feel like Ilia could still potentially hurt him. It might take longer in the fight, but Diego Lopez is definitely a live underdog, and I think at featherweight, this is by far his biggest challenge. But the fighter who I think has the highest chance of beating Ilia Topuria is Makhachev. I think that Ilia could also beat him too. I think this is a 50-50 matchup because Islam, for one, he is the best defensive fighter out of any of these guys on this list. And unlike Max Holloway and Volkanovski, he doesn't just use his footwork as his defense. He will actually move his head. He'll bring his hands back to his face, use his footwork, and also his grappling as a form of defense. And a guy like Yusuf Zalal was using great defense to avoid getting knocked out by Ilia Topuria. And offensively, we did see Ilia get dropped by a massive left head kick, and Islam has a great head kick. And yeah, his counter striking is going to be incredible, catching Ilia as he's moving in. And Ilia does typically throw his right hand while keeping his left hand low, and Islam has a great right hook that could catch Ilia Topuria clean. But at the same time, Islam does really love that clinch, and he's really comfortable, having his back against the fence in a clinch. But Ilia could unleash some devastating combos because he can break the clinch, work his body, and attack him with a big overhand. And we have seen Islam Makhachev hurt before, and we've heard stories in the gym that apparently Ilia is like a Dagestani killer or something like that. So it's a very compelling matchup in 50-50, but I think Islam could beat him, and he has the best chance of beating Ilia Topuria.